What can I say about this? Okay, so I kind of said all my points yesterday when I played the first session, but I'm gonna maybe build up on it a little bit. Maybe start from like the simplest things, like what I liked about this game would be like the first. Or actually, maybe it would be easier to say what I didn't like rather than what I liked, because this game has more like positives than negatives, honestly. Like for me, even personally, even though I don't look into games like this. Okay, so one thing immediately that I thought of, like there are some particle effects sometimes here and there, and there's also some like enemies, like for example like in the complete like blind test from Odin, where we were in the pitch black, like the enemies that walked in that darkness or just stayed still, like they sometimes like very like glitchily or like buggily just kind of like reset their like animations or whatnot, like here and there. And like what I'm saying is that in a game like this that is trying to be this immersive and also succeeds at it in almost every aspect, when you have those small moments, or like the moment where like in the tomb section of Odin challenges as well, when I was walking like backwards on the rooms and I could see the room change in front of my eyes, rather than having the room change like when your camera like you know, maybe the room would only change if you move your camera away from the room, so you could keep the room the same if you walk like backwards into a room, right? Like that's how, if you make it work like that, then it doesn't ruin the immersion, right? But if you have the room change into another room when you just like walk through the hallway and you can see the like objects change places, like that ruins the immersion a bit, you know? Like what I'm saying here is that a game like this that tries to be this immersive and atmospheric, it is important to try to go for as high amount of fidelity with absolutely everything as possible, and this game does succeed at it literally almost everywhere. The examples I was giving was only like one handful of examples that you can count with like 5 fingers pretty much, of where like the technical aspects of this game were like rather like bit like intrusive, you know, like ruin the immersion like a bit, you know. Now if we take that off, like one thing that, let's say, okay, one thing that I wasn't as big of a fan of was the creativeness of the puzzles. I feel like part of the reason as to why the puzzles had to be or were the way they were is because of the character, the dialogue, the inner dialogue, as well as the dialogue from like Senua's past, or from Ruth, or from the shadow talking, or the darkness talking. Like, I feel like the reason as to why the puzzles had to be like simple download, like dumbed down a lot. Like it was either you were walking through like those illusion barriers to change the environment, or you were matching those letters to fit the environment, like search like the letters from the environment so that you can like unlock the door, you know? The reason as to why the puzzles were so like simplistic for the entire game length probably has to do with the game's focus trying to be like the horror aspect, I think. Because the thing is, if you make a puzzle or creative puzzles that are meant to be like get more complicated as the game goes on, and you start giving, and you also give the player new ideas on what puzzles like is like, you basically advance the concept and make the puzzles harder by changing completely how they work, you know, introducing like completely new concepts, right? I feel like if they would introduce plenty of new like concepts for those puzzles, possibly, depending how difficult they would be and how they would be implemented, I feel like it would like ruin some of the immersion from them and focus away from hearing the inner dialogue with the voices that she keeps hearing inside of her head. And that's the part that the developers clearly wanted you to focus on. They wanted you to be able to somewhat coherently follow what the voices are saying to you. And if you have to do 2 difficult puzzles, let's say, then your focus is gonna be more so on what you can do with the puzzle rather than being able to listen to what the voices are saying. You know, follow the inner and the outer conflict of the characters, memories and conviction and all that, you know. And self-doubt, yes, of course. Self-doubt, insecurities, possible incapableness and all that. And fear, obviously. Dread and, you know, hatred, all these conflicting feelings that make a journey like this captivating to follow through. So that's the reason as to why the puzzles were dumbed down. Now, why I don't think that was great and I did not like it as much, I feel the reason for that was because the story and the voices were just that incoherent to follow. I feel if they made those even more simple to understand the dialogue of what the voices are saying. Now, but there's a fine line with it though, because if they make it too easy to understand what you are hearing all the time, then the psychosis part of hallucinating the voices and having it feel like you're anxious or you get startled from the voices, that feeling is not gonna transfer as well from the game to the player if the voices are too coherent and if they are too easy to understand all the time what they are saying. So that's also a narrow bridge that they have to walk when they were designing that, for sure. I guess one thing throughout that would help a lot, I feel movement speed in this game could be increased by a bit, when you run. Because I feel being able to do some of these puzzles and being able to move a bit faster would be nice. But then again, the reason as to why the character moves so slow, even when running, as well as turning, is particularly because the game wants to take some mechanics away from you and make them slower, because it makes you more tense, it makes you more anxious of your surroundings, it makes you more self-aware, it makes you a bit more insecure, and it makes you a bit more afraid of your surroundings and the terror that you feel from feeling how you are not always fully in control of how fast your character is moving and turning and all that, you know. So it builds on the horror aspect as well. And then I suppose one thing I could also say is, in combat you cannot freely move your camera, it's locked onto enemies around you and you don't have good control of moving the camera in combat. But there also is a reason for that as well that I can see. If you allow the player to freely move the camera in those combat sections, then it's gonna feel less intimate. The reason why the camera is locked onto enemies is because it's supposed to feel intimate for the player. How do I explain this better? It's kind of the same thing with the horror theme. When you lock the screen on one enemy at a time, when there's several enemies spawning around you, it forces the player to make choices of either reposition so that you can see all the characters on your screen, and this will make you play slower, more carefully, and it will also make you value taking hits from the enemies more when the gameplay and the gameplay loop is slower in combat. So that also is completely true to the horror aspect. The game does not want you to play the combat in this game like an action game or like a typical action game. It's more so like building or trying to like emphasize the horror part of the game again by having the combat be like this this like concise and how do I say this, intimate, concise, and like not as adventurous, I guess you could say. You take senses and mechanics off the player so that they have to work with a bit less, so that they can focus on what is like... Actually, no, wait, I was gonna say that wrong. But yeah, the lock on screen does play a big role, but I must say, for my playstyle personally, I felt it was more annoying than a nice thing to have. But I totally get why they have it like that. I honestly think that's a good gameplay choice for a game like this. But it's something that I personally didn't like as much because of how it forces you to play. But I think for another person playing this game who is more open-minded to this kind of like horror experience, I feel like that would be, or that is a perfect choice on how to make the camera in combat for a game like this. I think it's literally perfect. And also, the voices tell you where some of the enemies are sometimes, like behind you, like on your side, or like dodge or be careful or like run away, like the inner voices that Senua keeps hearing, the female voices in particular, like they guide you a lot around the game, as well as in combat as well, on like where some of the enemies are, kind of like Mimir does in like God of War 2018 and God of War Ragnarok, kind of the same like thing, you know? So that actually is really nice if you pay attention. And what else would I... like, what else negative or conflicting would I say about this? The technical performance of the game was totally passable. I think if I would play this game like off stream with the exact same settings, I would literally never have a frame drop, not one. So, like, it's like the performance of this game is absolutely excellent. They completely nailed that part. What else? What else? Bad thing that I got annoyed by. Oh, I know one. This might be more personal, but I feel like the time sometimes between combat sections and the time sometimes between the puzzle sections was a bit off. But I do say this because the main thing that I was experiencing for the first like half of this this session right here when I played this game here was in the Odin challenges. Like all of the Odin challenges, we don't have a sword because our last sword broke in the story. It's split in half. So we needed a Grom or a Gromr so that we could actually fight anything again. So I feel like the reason as to why I felt like the puzzle and the combat aspect was off was because of those challenges. I spent a lot of time doing those at the start of the stream. So I started to feel like there was too long time between the combat sections and the puzzle. Which isn't actually true. Like, after we got the Odin challenges done and we moved again normally, like, I think there was literally a perfect balance between puzzles and combat after pretty much. Like, it didn't bother me whatsoever. Like, I think it was actually perfectly paced. And also, before we broke our sword and faced Hela for the first time on the bridge to Helheim, like, on that bridge, I feel like... or before that bridge, when we killed Surtur and Balron, like, before those parts and during those parts, I think the pacing between the combat and puzzles was also done pretty much perfectly. Although sometimes, I guess part of it is just sometimes getting lost on like some puzzles or trying to look for like hidden stuff, is I spent like an uncomfortable amount of time sometimes just being stuck on like one position maybe, and that's why I felt like some of the puzzle parts like dragged longer than I thought. Maybe that's also part of it. Like, I think for a different person who would just play the game more straightforward and not trying to look for like every hidden thing, I feel like the puzzle and the like sword fighting parts would be like on a perfect balance, rather than for a person like me who tries to sniff every corner carefully, right? Which I didn't do in this game, by the way. When I noticed that this game obviously has no inventory, and the only thing that you're really collecting is the faces that you can get the dialogue from Senua's mother, basically. Gelina was it, yeah? You can get Gelina's dialogue from like looking at some statues of faces like on like mountainsides and rocks and whatnot. That's like one hidden thing you can find, and the other one is the lore stones themselves that are not usually like that hidden. Like, they are pretty obvious to find if you just know where to look or where to walk, because like they usually are in plain sight if you just know where to go, you know? So like there wasn't that many things to find in this game at all, which is not the point of the game, but yeah. So what I'm saying after that, or during with that in mind, is that even I didn't sniff like corners carefully in this game, but I did admire the scenery a lot and the atmosphere in this game. Which, is there any more slightly conflicting or bad things to say? Honestly, no. I can think of like a myriad of good things to say about this game over the very few amount of bad things I felt about this game. The absolute biggest part about this game that was really captivating was the atmosphere. Atmosphere, and particularly the sound design of the atmosphere. This game has some of the best sound design I have seen in any game. Like, I feel like, at least for me, having the sound effects and the ambient sounds be like done really perfectly is almost more important than having the visuals be done perfectly. But I kind of feel like that for any kind of game. But particularly in this game, I really felt that. And obviously, the visuals of this game are also very mesmerizing as well. Like, they are actually like hauntingly like captivating, really. They were done excellently as well. But maybe the thing that maybe like striked out to be absolutely the most out of this game personally, and this one probably is very personally because I like combat a lot more, but the combat like style with the immersion and the tenseness it has, and especially the sound effects in the combat, are absolutely the best I have seen in any game ever. Hands down. Like, those combat sections with the immersion and the thematic that they are trying to pull off, that they pull off so fucking well. Like, it is so like almost like revolutionary with how well it does it. Like, it's that good. Like, if somebody would make like a spin-off game from this where you have that same combat system and you make it a bit more complex and add more enemies and have that alone be the game, I would play it. Absolutely. And I would love it. The combat like atmosphere in this game is absolutely magnificent. It's so fucking good. Actually, one thing before I'm gonna stop this and go eat. Like, there was this one, like, movie that I was thinking of almost every time when I saw these combat scenes in this game, especially the first time when I started seeing these combat scenes when we very first time fight in this game. If I can find the file that I wanna show now. It is this one. I can show it now. Can I mute the game, please? This does not mute on the background, does it? Let me just turn that off. Okay, good. Right. I'm gonna show one part in particular of this movie. This is Guy Ritchie's depiction of the King Arthur. This is what I thought in my mind when I was doing the combat sections. This is a pretty dismissible movie for most part and for most people. The common consensus about this movie was that it was not very good. It was released in 2017. But I was always really captivated by this movie's like visual cinematography, which was incredibly beautiful to look at. But like, the style of like... Okay, well, when it's about to happen, that is... Just wait, just wait. I don't want to spoil too much, but yeah. Anyway, like... Tell me that the visual style and the sound design does not have any consistencies between Senua's combat and this.
You wanted to know what gave me...
Also, I don't think I was showing the sound. Okay, now the sound is on.
It was you.
Listen carefully.
You put me in that brothel. You caught me on the streets. I am here now because of you.
Those sound effects and the use of slow motion and the flashes of light as well as the imperfect camera during this fight scene as one example. This is what was going through my mind when I saw Senua's combat for the first time. Like, this is how it felt. Even the music feels similar. It's not like overwhelming music like on top of the fight. It's more like the music also in Senua, it's never on the forefront in that game. it's always like on even ground-ish with the sound effects, at least with the settings that I had it on. Anyhow, like it's the reason as to why the music is also not like that loud. Obviously, it's because the music does not like, it's not supposed to be like the main thing that they are serving with the combat experience of the game, you know. It's the sound effects, it's the voice, it's the tenseness, it's the like dread, like that's what you're supposed to like get from it. And if they would have like the music be like too loud, I feel like it would drown all the other senses, right? So that's another important part to nail there. But yeah, I feel like if the developers of this game did not get some inspiration from like that movie, with those fight scenes in particular, or maybe another movie that has the same kind of like visuals and thematic on like combat scenes, like this game for absolute certainty got like some like inspiration from something like that, for absolutely certain, or for sure. Like, I don't know, I can't mention more good things about the combat like thematic in this game. It's not complex combat by any means. There's honestly nothing complex about this combat, but when you do the simple things and have it work this well, this cohesively with what the game is portraying in and out of combat at the same time, it is absolutely a treat to experience. Such incredible execution. But yeah, I think I'm gonna stop there now. Next time I turn the stream on, I might be doing another playthrough of this game already, or I might be doing something else. We'll see.